Recording. So I want to welcome you to this chapter, Common Information Security Threats. Previously, we have looked at the different common network concepts. We have also looked at some of the common network devices. And now I want to see some of the security threats that we must be aware of as security engineers. So moving forward, information systems are often vulnerable and have sensitive confidential information that needs to be communicated or stored or even transmitted. Therefore, they are under threats in various scenarios through various means. People are trying to hack banks, people are trying to steal information to find out if, how best they can, manipulate and exploit the different vulnerabilities and weaknesses in the system for either malicious or even intentional, dubious acts. So this class uses some case studies about common attacks to introduce possible threats to information system. Upon completion of this course, you'll be able to categorize information security threats, also describe common information security threats means. Current situation of information security threats, want to look at it. So currently, there are endless security instances that you agree. There are attacks through malicious code. Someone sits down, writes codes and send it to your computer in forms of worms and viruses, comes on your computer and also destroys your thing. We talked about the WannaCry ransomware in the, I think, introductory lesson. The ransomware which propagated, networks in China, and companies ended up losing about 8 billion US dollars, and of course, losing projects and also important information. Still today, personal information is at the risk of being leaked or breached, and more than 90% of telecommunication fraud is targeted fraud conducted through precise information of citizens. An African will call you and say, "Hello, Ssendi, how are you? Long time, you have been lost on me. I've been looking for you. Every time I saw you at Makerere and you were so far, but are you okay? You looked a bit frustrated. Are you okay?" Yes, and by you being human, because someone is saying so much information about you, you actually trust him that very moment, and you actually feel like he knows you. Even when you don't know him, you start connecting dots. This guy was part of my classes. You get that way someone can easily manipulate you and be able to steal your information if you're not vigilant. Also, common process hijacking. Some people hijack processes, like FIFA source code was recently hijacked and hacked and stolen, and also even some other upcoming games. So in 2017, also there's traffic of users for multiple software applications in China was hijacked during software upgrade. Users were, lied to that you're going to do a software upgrade, but in terms of software upgrade, they actually, instead of downloading Windows patches and updates, they're actually downloading and installing viruses, which ended up stealing their information. We also have a common attack, which is a distributed denial of service attack. There was Final Fantasy is one of a popular game for the people who play games, more so strategy games, and it suffered 3 hours of distributed denial of service attack, where in 2018 people tried to attack it. And also in 2016, 5 major banks in Russia suffered from distributed denial of service attacks, lasting for nearly almost 2 years. Those are some of the use cases. There's also the beginning of cyber war. It started with Stuxnet. And in 2011, February, Iran suddenly announced that it was going to unload fuel for its first nuclear power station. The industry said Iran needed only 1 year to be able to quickly create nuclear weapons. But because these guys were clever, they decided to come up with a Stuxnet attack, which ruined 1/5 of the centrages of Iran, posting a research to delay for over even more than 2 years. Something which was supposed to happen in 1 year, their project, was delayed for over 2 years, which during that time the global landscape also changed. So what they used to do, they came up with a worm. They called it Stuxnet, and this was more like in terms of a computer worm. It would exploit mobile media and implant viruses all in Iran. And this Stuxnet was capable even attacking hardware, energy infrastructure. It was the first of its kind. It could change temperatures of the power plants, turn off things, turn on things. So it was something of its kind, and multiple attacks. means, and it affected over 45,000 networks worldwide, not just in Iran. And mostly sophisticated cyber weapon. It was one of the most sophisticated cyber weapon in the history of the world. So the evolution of security attacks, uh, today even forms of attacks largely unchanged. Before they used to use viruses, we also still use viruses. They used to use phishing, we also still use phishing. Okay, they also still use phishing, not we. And of course, they also target vulnerabilities in the much as they used to do in the past in 2010, in 2005 is the same way, only that they just keep on improving their game. And diverse attack purposes, of course, usually the target ranges from targeting personal computers for being used to influence economy, politics, war, or even energy and even global landscape. Of course, also as they're evolving, they're coming up with more sophisticated attack means. A major attack usually requires sophisticated deployment. You don't think you just wake up one night and attack something. You need to plan. You need to spend a lot of time trying to get into their system, to try and learn about their system, to try and learn about the vulnerability. So it's a long-term incubation. People be seated in an incubation, and all their job is trying to see how best they can hack and get into a given company. It's a combination of course, multiple attack methods to achieve one ultimate goal of bringing you to your knees. And sometimes those guys are always successful. So we have these security threat categories. We have the threat to cybersecurity, we have the threat to application security, and we have the threat to transmission and device security. Let us look at threat to cybersecurity. Here we shall look at some of them like distributed denial of service attack and network intrusion. Basically, it looks at network, what, those things. And now we are going to look at threats to application security. When you're using the applications, what are the vulnerabilities in your operating system, the kind of viruses that could attack your application, different malicious websites and phishing websites, and of course data breaches, like someone intentionally sharing data or doing something that is not within the IT policy. Threats to data transmission and device security. Data is when we process data every single day, we transmit it over the network or even share it on different mediums. So communication traffic hijacking, or sometimes there's a man in the middle who is tapping your communication and listening and tapping your packets that you're sending. Sometimes if it's an unauthorized login to the system, someone illegally logs into your system, and weak security protection for wireless networks. Because you want to make it easy for your end users to access the wireless, you give their weak protection, and then boom, the hacker brute forces the password, gets onto the network, and is also able to conduct more attacks on other computers that are connected to the network. So let us look at the threats to network security. And we are looking now at threats to cybersecurity, what we're calling network security, and we want to look at distributed denial of service attack. An example here was the Dyn DNS service, which was attacked in the United States. They conducted quite a number of distributed denial of service attack on Dyn. Around October 21st, 2016, DNS service from Dyn in the US was hit by a distributed denial of service attack from about 11 a.m. to about 5 p.m. Now, Dyn is a company that offers large-scale DNS. Remember, we talked about DNS and what DNS is. It's a DNS service company in the US. It's very common. It even offers for some of the big companies. Yeah. Dyn is a DNS service as software as a service provider whose core service to provide managed DNS to its users. And this attack severely affected its services, preventing its users from accessing the websites. Because many companies uses Dyn, there was severe damage caused, quickly spreading and also seriously causing harm. And over 100 websites became inaccessible because of these attacks for hours. Even one of the companies like Amazon is one of their clients, also suffered a loss of about 10 of millions of dollars. So usually for these guys to be able to carry out these attacks, they have zombies. And you're going to understand what zombies are. Zombies, they use zombies to launch the attacks, mainly consisting of cameras, consisting of DVRs, hard disk recorders, and also network devices or smart routers. They used a botnet called Mirai. They used a botnet called Mirai, and it infected millions of devices. After infecting those devices, then these guys use those devices to attack the system. So currently, the internet has many zombies and also botnets, and they are driven either by the desire to make profits or even just they are happy to just bring you on your needs. So these large-scale distributed denial of service attacks were launched from botnet, from these Internet of Things devices that were connected over the internet, which were affected by the Mirai malware. They infect the devices with Mirai malware, and they, send performs on those devices to attack your network. So how the Mirai was used to attack the system, it would, crack the IoT device password through brute force and implant the malware into the device for remote control. Like your fridge, smart TVs on the network, your cameras on the network, they use brute forces to, to crack them. After cracking them, they install their malware, and then they can use that malware to remotely log into your camera and use your, services to do whatever they want to do. They also used to scan for open, telnet service ports on the network, these ports of 22 or 23, to scan the network. And then after that, they get their zombies, they build a botnet. After building their botnet, they load the DNS attack module, and then the attack launches a distributed denial of service attack through the botnet, making customers' websites inaccessible. So we also want to look at a different mechanism, which is also called scanning. And scanning is a potential action, and it does not directly interrupt network devices. However, like you hear the word scanning, they're just gathering relevant information, network information before an attack. So it's also that dangerous. Please kindly excuse me.
Someone to continue with the lecture.
Do so, please.
Continue.
You guys, you can be discussing. You be discussing.
It's break time.
So scanning is the potential attack action.
I think the course should continue.
Good.
Someone to discuss for us.
So while Mr. Ssendi is on break, I want to find out why is it that on most of the routers that we access via web, we use 198.168.1.1, but for this one we use the .0.1. Could somebody just elaborate?
The default IP.
Yes, hello. I think to answer her question, most of the devices are different. For example, if you're using Huawei devices and also you're using Cisco, they usually have that different protocols and how they do their things. So that's why you would find that this port is different from the normal port, because usually when you are configuring devices, you get that port of .1.1. And
Yes.
now here we're getting the 0.1. So it is on the devices we use.
Yeah, I can add on. It is just the default passwords depends on the manufacturer. But
No, not the default password. The default IP
the default
address.
IP, yes, the
Yes.
default IP is just for the basic setup for you to
Yes.
access the device the first time. Because
Yes, I do understand, but I've accessed most of the Cisco routers and switches and all, they use .1.1. But I've seen
Yes.
from the device we're using .0.1. So I wanted to
It's
understand
not
the
a-
difference.
it's not an issue, madam. It's just for you to administer, to manage it the first time you are deploying that
check.
device, because basically you are going to use your own
Mic check.
What I know is it's the Huawei devices. They come with
Okay.
that IP.
These IP addresses they
Hello?
can be pre-configured.
Thank you.
What
Thank
we
you
need
all.
to do.
Thank you.
Check. Can I add something?
Yes, Chulu, add something, then we proceed.
Yes.
Okay. So by conversion, you find that servers, switches, including firewalls, are assigned the first IP addresses. For example, .0.1 or maybe even .3 would be assigned to the most important devices on a network. So that is why it's done like that. So that it's easy for maybe any network engineer to come and not say, okay, a firewall will be assigned .1 or a switch is .3. So that is the conversion.
Add something. Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
Due to time, I think contributions let them come at the end of the lecture.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yes, but just to make the point sink in, our colleague who asked, it entirely depends on the vendor, right? The vendor, it's a vendor who sets the default IP address, to access that device. Much as maybe Cisco decided to use .1.1, different vendors have different default IP addresses that you can use. If you have accessed quite a number of devices from different vendors, you actually come to appreciate that some of them have different IP addresses. But usually, most of them, it's either .0.1 or .1.1, usually. Yeah, but it is purely dependent on the vendor and what they decided, for them to be their default IP address for you to access their devices at the initial, setup. Right, so we're looking at address scanning. So we can either scan address and also we can do port scanning. Just a moment.
Again, we can continue. Someone to take us.
Guys, as we wait for Mr. Ssendi, I think we have.
Okay, so we're saying address scanning. Sorry about that. I apologize about that. Address scanning and port scanning. Basically, you're scanning potential attack action. It does not directly interrupt the network, but you are gathering important information about the network. Oh, are there open ports?
Check.
Are there vulnerabilities on the network? Can I scan them and I'm able?
Check, Mr. Ssendi. Please resize your screen. It's zoomed in a lot.
I zoomed in a lot. What screen are you seeing? I think it's zoomed in.
The screen is just okay, so.
The screen is fine.
I think it's the one on
the screen is fine.
Maybe the problem is with his machine.
Oh, I sorted it out. It's okay. I sorted it out.
Okay, all right. So we have address scanning and we have port scanning. So an attacker here, when it comes to address scanning, they can send like ICMP packets. Here we can trace the route, or also we can send ping commands and to see if there can be any address on that host and if it is reachable. And sometimes they use TCP UDP packets to initiate connections with certain IP addresses by checking whether they are response packets. The attacker can determine which target systems are live and are connected to the target network. And then from that information, they can use that information to decide to attack your networks. Here with port scanning, an attacker probes the network structure by scanning ports to identify, ports open on the attack target, so to determine the attack mode. And the attacker can usually use port scan software to initiate connections to a series of TCP or UDP ports to a wide range of hosts. Basing on the response packets, here the attacker can now determine whether the host uses ports for providing services. Spoofing attack or obtaining control permissions. Spoofing here, IP spoofing is launched by exploiting normal trust relationships between hosts, right? In my trust zone, I know all networks all hosts on these networks are in the trust zone, and they can communicate automatically, or they can communicate without trust issues. So hosts with IP-based trust relationships use IP-based trust authentication to determine whether to allow or to reject the access of other hosts. Between these two hosts with a trust relationship, users can now log into one host from another without permission verification. And the process of IP spoofing usually processes to attack the system. So an attacker can obtain control permission by either using brute force cracking of passwords. Also, attackers can also launch spoofing attacks such as IP spoofing to obtain access control and control permissions. So an attacker may send packets with forged source IP address to target hosts to obtain superior permission to access the control permissions. Like, you have your printer on your network and the printer is configured .0.6, right? And it is trusted whenever you send packets to the printer and send back, for you to be able to print. So someone can masquerade his IP address to be like the same of that print on your network, and they are able to establish trust relationships with your computer, and therefore it gets sniffed, and then you are able to be hacked. Like you're seeing in this illustration, there's host A here, there's a sniffer in the middle, and there's host B here. Let's say this was our printer, and here the sniffer masquerades his IP address. He spoofs it to be more like the one of host A, and host B sends packets and requests thinking that, I am actually talking to this guy, and yet in actual sense he's talking to some sniffer who is in the middle and trying to sniff those things in between. Okay, so moving to the next slide, launching the distributed denial of service attack. When we are launching the distributed denial of service attack, we're launching the distributed denial of service attack. When you're launching a distributed denial of service attack is typically the kind of traffic attack. In a distributed denial of service attack, an attacker reports to every possible means to control a large number of online hosts. They're trying to get zombies. They are sending malwares to as many Internet of Things devices connected to the network, and these controlled hosts are what we are calling zombies. After he gets zombies, now he can control those zombies to launch attacks, and a large number of attacks, let's say all coming to your server, and they exhaust your resources, and then blah. People cannot access, authorized legitimate users cannot access your services. People are going to your site and they're sending screenshots like screenshots you have been sending me. We are getting error 504. We cannot access their services. Attacks are being made. Okay, sometimes they're even unaware, but they can just tell them the resources are not available or the site cannot be reached. And this is what we're calling a distributed denial of service attacks. They may be divided into different types of categories. It could be, the SYN flood, it could be the UDP flood, IMCP, HTTP flood, HTTPS, and DNS flood. So what happens? We have an attacker who wants to jumpstart an attack. So he creates a jump server and he has zombies. He has attacked, many Internet of Things devices connection. And these devices, it could be an IP camera, it could be a smart TV, it could be any device that is on the network. And after controlling them, now he uses this botnet, and a botnet is a combination or a group of zombies. So he uses this botnet, all of them, to send traffic and attacks on your, attack target, all on your servers. And before you know it, the attacks have exhausted your network bandwidth and of course exhausted your server resources, and your services are unavailable to your end users. So firewalls, we can deploy firewalls at the entrance of our intranet and medium-sized enterprises and data centers to effectively defend against common attacks and traditional single packets. This is a way of how we can make sure that we try to control cyber attacks. So we can use protection through professional equipments like firewalls or anti-distributed denial of service attacks. So when it comes to the firewalls, we already talked about what firewalls are, and also the anti-distributed denial of service attacks or service systems. These devices are solutions provided by professional anti-DDoS services for carriers, enterprise data centers, portal websites, and also online games or even online videos and DNS services. So we are going to look at, we have looked at threats to cybersecurity or to network security. We said there are 3 categories, and now we want to look at threats to application security. And at this point, I want to welcome my co-instructor. His name is Samuel Senga. As I jump onto our next meeting, he's going to take you through and is going to be your instructor till the end of the lesson, and also has some important information that is going to he also has some important communication that is going to pass at the end of the class. Otherwise, that is it from me for now. Mr. Samuel, you are very welcome, and you can start from where I've stopped. I think I've stopped on a slide which starts with the application threats to application security.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me share my screen now. Let me first find out the slide and I can kickstart off the meeting. Threats to application security. Cool. Sorry. Let me share my screen. Hello, colleagues. I hope you people are doing well.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope you are enjoying. That's good. That's good. Let me share my screen. Okay. Hold on a second. See measure screen 1. Okay. Let me go back a little bit. You remind me on where you okay. You are done with threats to network security. We are going to threats to. Let me go to the slide. You did defense.
Mic check.
Yes, please.
Maybe you can kindly put your slides in presentation mode.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
There's like a window there down.
That's what I'm going to do. It's okay.
Okay.
And you've gone far.
I've gone far. Okay, you are done with threats.
He's gone far.
On slide 16.
Okay,
start from there.
16.
Oh,
what? You had covered defense measures for cyber attacks.
Samuel, I think
yes.
I think that Samuel.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
We are on threats of application security.
Just start on the content there. Go on the content page.
Slide.
Okay.
Next
Application
slide.
security.
Okay, so
You covered this one.
You have covered this. This is okay.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Go to the next slide.
If we are going, you this one, eh?
Yeah.
Yes.